Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42, joined here, of course, by Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life. And we're talking about tonight's action. There's a weird little three-game early slate. I'm not touching that, especially with the Coors game. It's now been postponed twice. Maybe throw a tournament entry in it or something. But either way, we're talking about tonight's slate and some big strikeout arms on the mound tonight. And starting at the top, you got Chris Sale, who he hasn't looked terrible this season, but he hasn't looked like Chris Sale. He's had a couple pretty bad games. He got rocked by, at the time, one of the worst offenses in the league. Now they're starting to get it going a little bit. He had a decent game against the same Detroit team a couple weeks back. So I think he's a tournament-only option. I'm not going to play him in cash games against Detroit. That's not a route that I'm liking to take. But who I do really like is Garrett Cole at $9,500. The guy's pitching great right now. He had a great game at Arizona. He pitched at Chicago, did well against Detroit. He's done it against some great teams. Coincidentally, his worst game is against the Reds so far this year, but Reds still aren't hitting the ball very well. Their team ISO is fine, but they're not hitting for particularly great average. That's pretty much what the Reds have now is power. So I love Garrett Cole here at 9,500.
Yeah, he's a really strong play today. I like DeGrom quite a bit at 8,500 on DraftKings. I think he's a pretty solid play. I don't think he's favored, though, which isn't the way I usually want to go in my cash games, but I think DeGrom's a great GPP play today, and I think he can be a decent secondary cash game play also.
And that price, too. Due to some recent struggles, his price is down way lower than we usually see it.
Yeah, I think he's a really strong GPP play. There's just not a lot of guys. There's a ton of strikeout guys on this, but there's not a lot of we had some minus 180s yesterday and stuff like that as far as the wins go. And today there's a ton of pick'em games.
Yeah.
One of the stronger favorites is Scott Kazmir against Minnesota. He's probably going to be one of my main cash game plays today. 8,000 on DraftKings is a really solid price. You mentioned Minnesota's been hitting better lately. Especially against lefties, actually. But I just think 8,000 for Kazmir is too cheap. Minnesota on the season hasn't been great. He's a decent favorite here. I don't think that line has actually come out yet, though. But at least on Pinnacle, I think he came out somewhere else. But I think he's probably going to be one of my main cash game plays.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The great thing about Kazmir is that he's efficient. He doesn't allow a lot of base runners. He pitches deep into games. At least 6 innings in every game so far. 3 of them 7+. So you got to like that, even if he's not overpowering anybody. If he gives you 7 strong innings at 8K, you're more than happy with that. Elsewhere, you can look at Lance Lynn, obviously, and he's been striking out a ton of guys, which is not what he's been doing in the past, but so far this year, 29% strikeout rate, 29.8. Obviously, we know the Cubs strike out a lot, but they also have a ton of upside, so he's a nice GPP play. Carlos Carrasco is another big strikeout guy against the Royals. I don't like to target the Royals in games very much, but a guy that I'm looking at who pitched really well last game is Danny Duffy. I like him in tournaments. He had a good game against Detroit, who actually crushes lefties. Now he gets Cleveland, who does not hit lefties well. $7,400. Certainly not a cash game play, but he's a really interesting tournament play, which doesn't usually have the 7K upside like he did last game. But if he keeps his walks under control, this is a guy that can pitch really well and pitch efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. He's a pretty strong play here at 7,400. One guy that's really cheap that I don't mind is Alfredo Simon against the White Sox. Has the Tigers offense behind him, only 5,300. He's actually thrown 6 innings a couple times this year. I don't really love it, but as far as a cheap play goes, I don't mind him too much at all, actually.
Yeah, and it seems like the only struggles he's had this year has been against lefties. He's given up a 141 WOBA so far to righties, and as we know, this is a pretty... Well, it's not all righties. It's not necessarily a righty-dominant lineup, but the lefties in this lineup are really, really weak. So
yeah, especially early this season. LaRoche and Eaton have both been really, really struggling. Even Abreu's been struggling a little bit as a righty, and they just haven't really gotten it going yet. I've been targeting guys against the White Sox quite a bit lately, ever since Minnesota and a couple other teams have gotten it going.
Yeah, and Connor Gillespie is a guy who hit righties really well last year, but hasn't done it so far this year.
Yeah.
Had 2 hits last night, but like we said, this isn't a lineup that's intimidating at all. And if you get that Detroit offense behind you, like you said, $5,300, I think he makes for a really nice secondary play. All right, anybody else you want to touch on before we move on to catcher?
No, I think that's it at pitcher for me.
All right, moving on to catcher here. Um, I'm going to mention him every day. He didn't homer last night, but Stephen Vogt still just mashing the ball.
Yep.
I like his price tag is still slowly creeping up at a 4,100. I still think it's not too bad. And facing off against Kyle Gibson, who an average at best pitcher. He's not a terrible pitcher, not a guy you want to necessarily stack a ton against, but not a guy that is going to beat you either. I mean, he doesn't strike anyone out. One strikeout every 3 innings so far this year. So, I mean, definitely a contact pitcher, and that could spell disaster against a lot of these Oakland bats tonight.
Yeah, definitely. The other guy I like high price wise is Santana. Again, he hit second in the order against the lefty last night. I'm guessing he's probably going to do that again. Great hitting conditions, though, at Kansas City today. 75 degrees, wind blowing out like 20 miles an hour to left. He's going to be hitting from the right side of the plate. I think he's a really strong play today.
Yeah, I'm with you there, especially if he's batting that second hole, because, I mean, you get a guy that, one of the few guys that has power on that team against lefties, so
Yep.
you get that big upside there as well. So I definitely like that call. I'm struggling with some of these other catchers. Not a whole lot of guys are jumping off the page at me here. Anybody down cheap that you like? Because I think. Oh, go ahead.
I don't mind McHenry if he starts for Colorado today in Game 2.
Okay.
I'm not sure what they're going to do catching wise, whether they're going to start Hundley Game 1 or Game 2, but 3,500 for the catcher at Colorado. I'm not going to argue with that. That's probably going to be the main cheap guy I go with. Pierzynski's still out there. He's facing Jeremy Williams today at 3,500. I think he's an all right play. Like you said, though, not a lot to love.
Yeah, and I'm with you there, Brzezinski. I mean, he's going to have that good lineup spot. He's been batting cleanup, so as far as the cheap guy there, and that Atlanta's still continuing, like, surprising us all, still swinging some hot bats over here, scoring some runs. So if he's involved with that, hitting right behind Freddie Freeman, then that's probably the route I'll be going if I'm going cheap, unless some other value emerges throughout the day here.
Yep.
All right, moving on here to first base, where once again there's a lot of expensive top options that you can look at here, as there always is. I mean, you've got guys like Freddie Freeman going up against Jeremy Williams. You already talked about there. I'm going to continue to target him. He's been mashing the ball. Homer last night, 3 runs scored. Obviously, the Braves just crushed last night. I think they scored 9 runs, but still, I mean, he's got a nice high floor against a bad righty. I like him a lot if you're going to pay up. Outside of him, you look at Adrian Gonzalez is always in play for me. I mean, the guy's just incredible. Hit another home run last night, and now tonight he gets a fine matchup that you're not really scared of in Willie Peralta, who really struggles against left-handers. Well, he hasn't been so good against righties this year either. So I like the Dodgers a lot, and I think Gonzalez will be a guy that I'll be paying for in some spots. And 4,900 is kind of steep, but I don't mind that price tag against a pitcher who's been pretty equally bad across the board.
Yep, definitely. I like Encarnacion a little bit against Sabathia tonight at 4,400 too. He's a guy I'm going to be looking at a lot in GPPs. David Ortiz against Colomé, the righty. I think he's a pretty strong play. Look at Prince Fielder again. He looked pretty good last night. He's been hitting just incredibly well. The wind's blowing out to dead center today, I believe, at Houston. So I think he's a strong play at 4,600 again also. There's a lot of guys at the top here that you can play at first base. I mean, if we're looking at cheap guys, I think it's still Ike Davis at the top one, 2,600 against a righty and Gibson. I mean, that's just too cheap.
Yeah, that's dirt cheap.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be far and away my most used value play at first base if I'm using one. Outside of that, I mean, there's not really a lot anywhere near that price.
Yeah.
Justin Smoke, I
Oh,
guess.
go ahead.
Justin
How
Smoke
much is he?
against Sabathia.
Yeah.
He's 3,000, hitting from the right side of the plate. He has some nice power from that side of the plate, but I think I'd rather play Davis for 400 less still.
Yeah, I agree, because he's going to give you a higher floor there. And one other guy I'll throw out for tournaments is Chris Davis, because Jacob deGrom, if you're not playing, has had some struggles with lefties this year. 3 homers allowed, over a 400 WOBA. So obviously you expect those numbers to drop throughout the season. They're going to regress back to where they belong. But, I mean, at this time, obviously we know what Chris Davis is capable of. He might also get you 3 strikeouts on the other side with Jacob deGrom. So if one of the times he makes contact's a home run, we know he likes to swing hard. So I don't mind that play at all either. All right, moving on here to second base, where I'm I was real disappointed last night in my boy Jose Altuve. Had pretty much his
Yep.
worst game of the season, but I guess you can't always get 2 or 3 hits every day. So, I mean, obviously, I'll give him a little bit of a pass there. Today against Colby Lewis, he's pretty pricey considering he's facing a righty, but it is a really bad righty. So, I mean, he's a tournament play for me tonight in this situation. I don't mind him there. Brian Dozier, he's going against a good lefty and Scott Kazmir, but he makes for always a nice tournament play against a lefty. He's got tons of power, and he's been hitting the ball really well recently. So if you're not going with Kazmir as your secondary guy, I think that Dozier's in play also.
Yeah, definitely. Couple lefty-lefty matchups with Kipnis and Cano I'm probably avoiding today. Howie Kendrick, I don't mind for 3,900 against Peralta. Like you mentioned, Gonzalez is in a good spot today. A lot of their lineups in a pretty decent spot today against Peralta. Devin Travis against the lefty Sabathia. I like him for 3,400. That's a pretty solid play for me. He's probably going to be my most used second baseman, I would think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, that price at 3,400, batting the top of that order, really like that guy or that spot for him tonight a lot. Looking down here further, there's not a whole lot of guys jump off the page. If you see, for some reason, a nice lineup spot for Jose Ramirez, which every once in a while happens at 3,100. I thought Aviles would be batting second last night against the lefty, and he wasn't. So, seems like Francona's mixing up that lineup a lot, so I don't mind him. I'd probably play him at shortstop, though, because he does have that dual eligibility. Johnny Giavotella, if he gets a nice lineup spot at 2,600, has been an okay punt. He's really, really cheap there. So, I mean, I'm probably not going to be playing him if he's batting seventh again, but he did bat second a couple times. I think that was just because Pujols was out. But either way, he's a cheap play against Roenis Elias, who we know likes to, he's a decent strikeout pitcher, but he also walks a lot of guys, so there should be some base runners too. All right, I think that's about it for me at second base. Not a lot of
me too.
As usual, it's pretty barren down there at the bottom. All right, moving on here to third base, where we've got Josh Donaldson against the lefty. So if you got the money to pony up for Josh Donaldson, he's 5,400, and it's CC Sabathia, and it seems that CC Sabathia likes to get hit by bad hitters and not so much by the good ones anymore. So, but either way, I mean, Josh Donaldson has insane numbers against lefties. So if you want to pay up, he's got massive upside there at 5,400. You can certainly consider Adrian Beltre if you want to pay up, I guess, at 4,400. More of a tournament play because he still just isn't hitting the ball. But, I mean, you got to like the matchup there against Samuel Deduno, who has been okay, but as we know, a career reliever and a guy that he's a contact pitcher. He's nothing special.
Yeah, I love A-Rod today, actually. 4,000 on DraftKings, facing a lefty in Burley, hitting right in the middle of the Yankees lineup that's been really solid. He's probably my favorite DraftKings third base play today, actually.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good call. I mean, he's a guy that it feels weird to be rostering him this year, but I mean, like you said, he's getting it done. That lineup's scoring some runs. You got Mark Teixeira, not hitting for average, but for a ton of power. A lot of guys hitting the ball hard there. You got Manny Machado's at 4,200. Bad leadoff last night. Hit a home run. He's got some nice upside there as well, obviously, with that lineup. Elsewhere at third base, you've always have Pedro Alvarez as a guy with some big upside in tournaments. He's sitting at $4,100. You play him at first or third. We know Mike Leake, when he gets hit hard. So I don't mind targeting some of these Pittsburgh bats here as well.
Yeah, Cody Ash against, I'm going to butcher this, but Fulty Newich. Is that how you say it?
I asked Josh about this one because he knows him. I think it was Fulton Witz.
Fulton Witz, okay.
Very close to that.
Yeah, that looks right now. All right, Fulton Witz, yeah. He didn't have a very good game last time he threw. Ash is 3,200. He hit, I want to say, third in the lineup yesterday when Utley got the day off. I'm guessing he's going to be back down to fifth today, but I don't mind him for 3,200 against a subpar pitcher there.
Yeah, and Mike Moustakas at 3,300. He's been struggling over his last 4 or so games, but we know that Carrasco at times is very hittable, and $3,300, he's batting second. We know what this Royals lineup is capable of against everyone, so I might take a discount there with him. I really don't mind him as a cheap cash game option if you don't like any of the top guys either. But outside of that, looking down deep once again, it's a pretty rough down at the bottom here tonight. Once again,
yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here to shortstop, where don't get too excited because there's still not going to be a whole lot at shortstop either. Maybe Hanley Ramirez is back today. Maybe he's not. If he is, he's obviously your top option here at DraftKings, where he has shortstop eligibility. Maybe, I don't know, for a day or two, but he has it now. If he plays, he's certainly your highest upside guy there. Marcus Simeon's the guy that continues to hit the ball, get a great lineup spot. He's 4,400, getting to be pretty pricey there, but I mean, as we noted earlier, there's not a whole lot of expensive pitchers that you feel too great about. So you might just go down with some of these guys in the middle 7 to 8K range. You'd probably be fine with those pitchers. You can get plenty of hitters in your lineup tonight.
Yep. Jimmy Rollins hit a home run last night. He's back.
No. I know. I'm
back.
so pissed too.
I played him a decent amount again. I have to every day now.
Yeah.
I just have to.
He was the guy who I was talking to Chris about it yesterday, actually, and I was telling him that I was like, watch, Jimmy Rollins is going to hit a home run, and I'm leaving him out of my Dodgers stack because he's terrible. And then, lo and behold, there he goes.
Yeah, he had a nice game last night. I think he had a walk, too. I don't mind Johnny Peralta against Leicester today. I don't love him going against Leicester, but for 3,500, he hits lefties pretty well.
Leicester hasn't exactly been dominant either this season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's not a whole lot else to like at shortstop. I mean, even value-wise, like, not a lot. I'm going to be probably on Rollins and Peralta a ton today. Not much I'm looking at here. I mean, Micah Viles, I guess, if he's in the lineup again, facing a lefty, he's got decent splits against lefties, but that's more because he's so bad against righties than anything else for me. But I think he's an all right play. I'd love for Hanley Ramirez to be in the lineup, but it doesn't sound like he's going to play today. Unless he DHs maybe, which would be kind of nice, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, no reason for them to force him back in tonight, I don't think. But we'll keep our eyes open for that. Freddie Galvis did bat second yesterday. He didn't do anything. He went 0 for 4. But if you need a punt and he's, for some reason, in that 2-hole again, I mean, you could do much worse, I think, than him at 3,100. But, yeah, outside of that, Marwin Gonzalez has been batting 6th. He's not a particularly great hitter, but he's a guy who's got some speed. Obviously, we know the Astros have been scoring some runs. So at 3K, if he's batting 6th again, he was kind of a filler for me in some GPP lineups yesterday. So I really don't mind him at 3K. I think he's a decent hitter in that spot, especially if he's hitting 6 at 3K.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the outfield here, where you've got Nelson Cruz up there at the top at 5,500. He's having a hell of a season. So if you want to pay up for Nelson Cruz, I don't blame you there. He's going against C.J. Wilson, a lefty. As we know, he destroys left-handed pitching. So, obviously, he's certainly in play. Mike Trout, somehow the 7th most expensive guy on the board at outfield. He had an 0 for 4 day yesterday, but, I mean, that doesn't matter. It's still Mike Trout, and he's still going against a young pitcher. So, I like him. And you've got to consider Jacoby Ellsbury. I don't care who he's playing. The guy's just absolutely on fire. 3 for 5 again last night, scored 2 runs, stole 2 bases. It's like when Jacoby Ellsbury gets on first base now and you have him in your cash games, you just stop watching because you know you're going to get that 5 points on DraftKings or 2 points on FanDuel for that stolen base because he always goes.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see what Arizona and Colorado do with this doubleheader today. If we can get some fairly lower priced backup guys in here, maybe Enciarte, I think, is 3,600. He's going to play one of the 2 games, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, just keep an eye on that lineup and see what they do with it because I can't imagine they're going to play the exact same lineup back-to-back in both of these games. There's still some rain concerns there, but we'll see how that goes.
Michael Brantley, by the way, lefty again, but we know he hits lefty. He's just absolutely locked in right now. 15 or more DK points in 4 straight games. So if you want to go that route, if you want to pick on Danny Duffy a little bit, I don't blame you. I mean, I love Michael Brantley right now, too.
Yeah, towards the bottom, Ruggiano, I believe, hit first yesterday for Seattle. Or was that 2 days ago?
First or second, either way. He was at the top of the order either way.
Yeah, him and Weeks flip-flopped one game, I want to say. Oh, he hit first 3 games ago, and then Weeks has hit first the last 2 games, and he's hit second. So I don't mind both those guys against the lefty, hitting at the top of the order there. They're both dirt cheap. Weeks has second base eligibility. I actually didn't mention him at second base, but both at 3,200 on DraftKings I think are fine value plays. Ryan Rayburn against another lefty. He's been just crushing lefties this year. He's basically only playing against lefties, but 3 out of the last 4 games, he has a hit against lefties, so I think he's a strong value play also at 3,000.
Yeah. And Billy Burns at 2,700, been leading out for Oakland. Can't
Yeah,
overlook it. And he's getting on base and scoring runs too.
yeah, he's a really solid base stealer. I actually watched him a little bit last night, and I mean, he went on the first pitch after his first at bat. So he looks like he's going to provide quite a few stolen bases if he keeps hitting at the top there. So he's a really strong value play, I think, as long as he keeps hitting at the top of that order.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of his.
Kiermaier hit first yesterday. I think he went 1-for-4 or 0-for-3 with a walk or something like that. He's up to 4,100 on DraftKings. I don't mind it, but I don't love it.
Yeah.
I'd prefer him be 3,300 like he was yesterday. Ben Revere hit first for Philly yesterday, facing a righty. I think he's a pretty strong play, but 4,000 doesn't really get me too excited. I don't know if I really want to pay up for that. I'd probably rather have Kiermaier, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And his teammate David DeJesus, not 2,400 today, but 3,200. Still a decent value. Not quite the value he was yesterday, but he's still nice and cheap. And also Alejandro De Aza at 3,300.
Yeah, he sat out yesterday, so he should play today.
Yeah, and should be back in the leadoff spot, so makes for a nice cash game play there. All right, that's going to wrap things up for us. Follow us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Find all of our great content for tonight's slate at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.